The beam struck Galsai's fury head-on. Void shields flared to supernova intensity, then collapsed in cascading sheets of white fire. The beam bored into the fortress monastery's prow, atomizing armor plate kilometers thick. Decks vanished. Bulkheads ceased to exist. For a heartbeat that stretched toward eternity, the flagship of the Stone Dogs was caught in the grasp of a star. Then the beam faltered, not from mercy, from interruption. The equatorial node, already spider-webbed with fractures from concentrated lance fire, ruptured under the combined strain of imperial bombardment and internal overload. White energy cascaded sideways through the ring structure instead of forward. The beam against Galsai's fury sheared off course, slicing across empty void. The fortress monastery drifted, molten and wounded, but alive. On the bridge, sparks rained from the ceiling. Consoles detonated. Servitors burned where they stood. Blacklock remained upright. "Status," he demanded. "Forward sectors devastated." Virek 12 rasped through distortion. "Primary cathedral spire destroyed. Casualties severe. Reactor stable for now." Outside, the false star convulsed. The damaged ring node spat arcs of white lightning into space. Energy redistribution patterns faltered for the first time since their arrival. Sebastian's voice cut through the chaos. "You cracked it! Focus fire on that breach." "All batteries," Blacklock ordered, voice iron despite the ruin around him. "Concentrate on the damaged node. Do not relent." Macro shells streaked across the void in disciplined fury. Lance beams stabbed into the widening fracture. The White Fleet moved to interpose, but the loss of ring coherence had disrupted their perfect formation. Vessels drifted a fraction too slow. Reaction times lengthened by imperceptible margins. The Stone Dogs exploited everyone. 2 elongated white ships detonated under overlapping salvos. A third fractured and spiraled into the artificial star's gravity well. The architect reacted. Its colossal form shifted, limbs unfolding into weapon arrays that pulsed with gathering annihilation. Escalation threshold exceeded. The false star brightened again, brighter than before. Virek's tone sharpened to urgency. "It is diverting stellar mass into the core. If that node collapses entirely, the energy feedback could trigger a contained nova." Sebastian's reply was immediate. "Contained is optimistic." Blacklock saw it clearly now. If the node detonated uncontrolled, the system would die, and perhaps the corridor back to Correlais with it. The architect was prepared to sacrifice the structure, to deny victory. "To win," Blacklock murmured. He turned to Jorun. "Prepare teleport assault." Jorun did not hesitate. "You intend to board a star?" "Yes." Teleportarium arrays screamed under the strain of stellar interference. Coordinates locked onto the fractured equatorial ring segment, the same node they had shattered. White light engulfed Blacklock and the First Company. They materialized onto a surface that was not truly solid. The ring's interior was a lattice of living metal channels, each carrying torrents of condensed stellar plasma in precise, controlled streams. White energy flowed beneath transparent layers, like rivers of captive sunfire. Gravity fluctuated unpredictably. The heat should have annihilated them, yet the structure maintained an envelope, a calculated survivability margin. War forms awaited them, sleeker and deadlier than any before, white constructs with limbs shaped for void combat, their bodies resonating with the architect's core frequency. "Forward!" Blacklock commanded. The battle was immediate and brutal. Thunderhammers crushed crystalline limbs. Stormbolters detonated white constructs into cascading fragments that attempted to reassemble mid-fall. Blacklock drove Indomitus into the channel housing of the damaged node, carving deeper into the fracture. The ring shuddered violently. The architect felt it. Across the void its colossal form pivoted, white gaze narrowing upon the equatorial breach, persistent variable. A surge of energy redirected inward. The warforms doubled their assault, moving with renewed precision. Jorun intercepted one mid-leap, smashing it into the lattice floor. "We will not hold long," he voxed. "We do not need long," Blacklock replied. He uncoiled the lash of redemption and hurled it into the exposed energy conduit, the barbs embedded into the channel's inner lattice. The power field flared violently as stellar plasma surged against it. Warning sigils flooded his vision. He wrapped the lash's grip around his forearm, anchoring himself. "Magos," he transmitted, "divert all remaining lance power into this node." Virek's response was immediate. "Executing." In orbit, Galsai's Fury and the surviving Stone Dog's vessels focused every operational weapon on the same wounded segment. Lance beams converged in a single blinding column. Macro shells struck the fracture in disciplined sequence. Inside the ring, the energy conduit began to destabilize. White plasma bled outward, containment fields flickering. The architect moved to intervene directly. A limb of impossible scale extended from its stellar perch, reaching toward the equatorial ring. Blacklock saw the shadow fall across the lattice. He ignited Indomitus one final time. "For Carnassus," he growled. He drove the chain fist into the heart of the conduit. The teeth bit deep. The lash held fast. The lance strike from orbit punched through the same seam. For one infinite second, white light consumed everything. Then the equatorial ring shattered. The rupture cascaded around the artificial star's circumference, destabilizing its carefully balanced energy transfer. The false star dimmed violently as stellar mass bled uncontrolled into space. The architect recoiled, its colossal form momentarily distorted by feedback through its own lattice. Inside the ring, teleport recall engaged at the edge of failure. Blacklock and the surviving Terminators vanished in flickering light as the segment disintegrated behind them. They reappeared aboard Galsai's Fury as the system convulsed. The artificial star collapsed inward, not exploding but imploding into a contained singularity of white light that shrank rapidly upon itself. The surrounding white fleet faltered, many vessels losing coherence as their command harmonics fractured. The architect's form flickered. Cracks of white light splintered across its vast body. Structural compromise detected. The gravitational broadcast stuttered and died. Across distant sectors, Necron signatures that had flared in response to its announcement flickered uncertainly. Authority disrupted. Ascendancy denied. The architect withdrew. Its immense form phased backward into the collapsing stellar core, vanishing as the artificial star extinguished entirely. Darkness reclaimed the system. Debris drifted where a star had burned. White constructs lay shattered across the void. The Stone Dog's fleet hung battered but intact. On the bridge of Galsai's fury, Blacklock stood amid ruin. "Confirm," he said. Virek's optics glowed bright in the dimness. "Artificial stellar construct neutralized. White fleet in retreat. Sector-wide Necron synchronization has dropped to pre-convergence levels." Sebastian's voice came through, breathless, disbelieving. "You did it." Blacklock did not celebrate. He stared into the dark where the architect had stood. "No," he said quietly. "We delayed it." Deep within subspace layers beyond the ruined system, fragments of white light coalesced once more. Damaged, reduced, but not erased, the architect recalculated. The Stone Dogs had proven more than a variable. They were resistance embodied. The equation would require expansion. And far across the galaxy, ancient Necron intelligences registered the failed convergence. Interest sharpened. The war in Coralie was no longer a local reclamation. It was a proving ground. Blacklock finally lowered Indomitus. The lash of redemption hung scorched but unbroken. He turned to his surviving warriors. "We return to Carnassus," he said. Behind him, Furnace Point flickered faintly in distant space. The furnace still burned, and the galaxy had taken notice. The first sign was not a fleet. It was silence. Furnace Point, which had churned and whispered and howled for months beneath the strain of Necron interference, went still for 13 heartbeats. Then it screamed. The warp storm tore open like a cauterized wound ripped apart by a blade. Empiric lightning forked across the void. The carefully stabilized corridor the Stone Dogs had carved flickered violently, and something came through. Not cold geometry, not white stellar constructs. Red. Armored hulls forced their way out of the storm, plates scarred and painted in dried gore, prow rams shaped like fanged maws, chain blade prows spinning even in vacuum, vox arrays broadcasting nothing but distorted laughter and the distant echo of drums. At their head rode a colossal battle barge, its hull carved into the shape of a snarling demon's skull. Across its flanks burned a name in High Gothic, written in arterial red, Bannock Baneblade. And behind it, the Blood Drinkers. The outer agri-world of Helion's Rest was the first to fall. It had no orbital defenses to speak of. Its planetary governor had petitioned Carnassus for protection 3 times in the last century, and had received only curt assurances that all threats would be met. The Blood Drinkers did not announce themselves. They simply translated into low orbit and fired. Macro-cannon shells the size of hab blocks smashed into crop seas. Entire continents of grain ignited in burning spirals. Drop pods followed, blackened, rune-carved coffins slamming into fields and hab zones alike. The renegades emerged howling. Their armor was once imperial, crimson and brass, now layered with trophies and skulls, chains wrapped around pauldrons, flesh nailed to breastplates. Helm lenses glowed with berserk fury. They did not take captives. They did not establish footholds. They ran, chain axes screaming, bolt pistols roaring, slaughtering until ammunition ran dry, then butchering with bare hands. At their center strode Bannock Baneblade. He was massive, even by Astartes standards, encased in Baroque Terminator armor fused with brass demon plates. An enormous chain blade was mounted along his forearm, its teeth permanently stained black-red. His vox-amplified laughter echoed across burning plains. "Blood for the Lord of the Furnace," he roared. The skies above Helion's Rest turned crimson with ash. Within 24 hours, the planet was reduced to a charnel world. And then the blood drinkers left, not to conquer, but to hunt the next. The Astropathic scream reached Galsai's fury 2 days later. Blacklock listened in silence as the message replayed, a fragmented transmission of static screams and the final desperate plea of Helion's governor. Sebastian stood nearby, uncharacteristically solemn. "That wasn't Necron," he said quietly. "No," Blacklock agreed. Virek 12 projected the auger images captured before Helion's orbital arrays were annihilated. Red-armored Astartes, brass iconography. Khorne's sigil burned openly across drop-pod hulls. Jorun's jaw tightened. "Renegades!" Sebastian's mechadendrite twitched. "They came through Furnace Point." "Yes." Blacklock felt the bitter irony settle in his chest. They had broken the Necron ring. They had widened the corridor, and something else had slipped through. Records were sparse, but not non-existent. Bannock Baneblade had once been Captain Baneblade of the World Eaters Renegade Legion. He had been declared lost during a crusade into the Halo stars centuries ago. His fleet had vanished into warp turbulence. Now he had returned, changed. His warband moved with brutal simplicity. Strike fast, slaughter, withdraw before meaningful resistance could gather. They were not attempting to seize Karnassus. They were destabilizing the string. Every agri-world burned weakened the stone dog supply chains. Every hive attacked stretched their defensive capacity thinner. "Divide and exhaust," Sebastian murmured as fresh reports flooded the hololith. "Not a berserker's strategy." "No," Blacklock said, bitter memories bubbling to the surface. "He is more than rage." The Forge Moon of Virelion mounted a defense. Orbital batteries activated as the blood drinkers translated in-system. Defense monitors fired volleys of torpedoes into the incoming fleet. Banak answered by ramming. His battle barge smashed through the primary monitor, its reinforced prow splitting the vessel in half. Boarding torpedoes launched mid-impact, punching into Virelion's shipyards. The blood drinkers did not simply slaughter. They desecrated. Machine shrines were toppled. Tech priests crucified upon their own servo arms. Manufactorums sabotaged before being set alight. Bannock himself carved a path through Skitarii cohorts, roaring praises to Khorne with each kill. When the moon's plasma reactors went critical, the renegades had already withdrawn. The explosion turned Virelion into a molten ring of debris. Deep within the Coralized sector, the architect observed. The sudden influx of chaotic violence disrupted its recalculated models. Human renegade entities exhibited non-linear aggression. The blood drinkers attacked randomly, yet their effect was precise. Destabilization of defensive networks, resource depletion, civilian displacement. The architect adapted. Its white signals shifted focus. If the stone dogs were a variable, these new intruders were contamination, and contamination required purging. Blacklock convened his captains. "We cannot defend every world." The statement was simple, brutal, true. Joroon's voice was steady. Then we make him commit. Sebastian leaned against a hololith projector, arms folded. Banak isn't building territory. He's baiting you, he said quietly. Yes, Blacklock said, and he will get what he wants. A silence followed. We draw him to Carnassus. The words landed like a hammer. Sebastian stared at him. You want to invite a Khorne warband into your home system? Yes, Blacklock replied. Joroon's eyes burned behind his helm. On ground we choose. Blacklock nodded. If he desires worthy skulls, he will come. And if he doesn't? Sebastian asked. Blacklock's expression did not shift. Then we will find him. They did not wait long. Banak Baneblade received the broadcast, a challenge issued openly from Carnassus. The stone dogs endure. Come and test your blades against iron. The response came as laughter across the warp. Furnace Point flared once more. The blood drinkers translated directly into the Carnassus system. This time they did not strike an outer world. They burned hard for the fortress monastery itself. Bannock's battle barge surged ahead of his fleet, chain prow spinning in eager anticipation. On the bridge of Galsai's fury, Blacklock stood unmoving. Prepare for close engagement. Sebastian's voice crackled over encrypted channel. I will not be parking anywhere near that. Remain at range, Blacklock replied. Joroon stepped forward. Orbital defense grid active. Outside, macro batteries aligned. Void shields flared to full. The blood drinkers opened fire first. Shells of corrupted ordnance smashed into Carnassus's defense perimeter. Boarding torpedoes streaked like meteors toward the fortress monastery. Bannoc's vox amplified across all channels. Blacklock, he roared, bring me your skull. Blacklock activated his helm. I am here. The first boarding torpedo struck. The war for the Coralli's string shifted once more. Not cold white, not silent calculation, but roaring chain blades and rivers of blood. The furnace had spat iron. Now it spat fury. The first boarding torpedo struck like a meteor. It punched through the outer bastion of Galsai's fury, burrowing deep into armor and detonating with a shockwave that split bulkheads and hurled servitors into ruin. Red armored figures emerged from the smoking breach before the air had even finished venting into vacuum. The blood drinkers came howling, chain axes revved to a deafening scream. Bolt pistols spat mass reactive fury down cathedral corridors that had stood unbreached for 6,000 years. Within moments, the fortress monastery had become a war zone. Blacklock stood at the head of his honor guard in the hall of the Silentium relics. The floor trembled with the impact of incoming boarders. He did not move. Let them come, he said. On deck primers, the first clash was apocalyptic. Stone dogs met renegades in the nave of a vaulted chapel dedicated to the Emperor's wrath. Statues shattered under stray bolter rounds, braziers overturned, fire mingling with arterial spray. The blood drinkers fought like madmen, but not without discipline. They struck in wedges, shock units driving through with chain blades, while supporting squads laid down suppressive fire. They knew how to breach. They knew how to isolate command corridors. They were not rabble. At their center, a massive figure tore through the melee. Banach Baneblade had boarded personally. His Terminator armor was a walking altar to slaughter. Brass runes pulsed across its surface. The chain blade mounted to his arm roared as it carved through a Stone Dog's veteran, splitting ceramite and flesh in one savage sweep. He laughed as he fought, not the shrill madness of the possessed, but something deeper, joy. Joroon intercepted him first. Thunderhammer crashed against Chainblade in a blast of sparks that lit the hall like lightning. Banach's helm lenses burned crimson as he leaned close, voice amplified through external vox. "You fight well, dog." Joroon said nothing, hammer rising again. Banach met the blow head-on, armor buckling but holding. "I have fought better," he snarled. He drove his chain blade down, forcing Joroon to one knee. "Have you ever seen a Primarch's chosen bleed?" Joroon's helm snapped up. Before he could respond, Banach kicked him backward with bone-cracking force. The Blood-Drinker warlord turned, carving down another Stone Dog with contemptuous ease. "I stood at Scarlathrax," he roared, voice carrying through the chamber. The name rippled through the voxnet like a shockwave. Even the renegades paused fractionally. "Kharn himself led us," Banach bellowed. "I watched him break brother from brother, watched him wade through world-eaters and imperial alike." His chain blade tore through a Stone Dog shield and into the marine behind it. I learned at his side what war truly is. Joroon surged back to his feet.